Hello, I'm Drew Clemmensen, the Iowa Soybean Association's Research Center for Farming Innovation. We're looking at strip trials today and what strip trials are and what they do and how we use them here at the association. They're an attempt to look at products or practices side by side, replicated 4 times across the field, and then determining whether the yield increased our yield, decreased our yield, or exactly what happened. And then that's, in the simplest form, that's what our replicated strip trials are. What these are set up to do and look like are to provide some realistic information to the grower on their acres for what a product or practice laid out side by side, replicated 3 or 4 times in a field can do. And it brings some value when that can be done in your own backyard on your farm. That's what we're looking for. A lot of different soil types, different topographies, different yield environments. All of those bring a lot more value to the data versus that flat black dirt that we're accustomed to seeing with strip trials. They range anywhere from 10, 20 acres clear up to whole farms. We do work with guys that are working with 80 or 160 acres in a trial. So a wide range of opportunities there. They're very easy to implement. They're geared towards your own management styles. So we're not asking for you to change your management decisions or timings or anything. It is simply taking a product or practice and putting it side by side on a farm and using your same management parameters that you're using on the rest of your acres. That's what a Research Center for Farming Innovation strip trial looks like. We're here in Southwest Iowa on the farm of Steve McGrew. And Steve, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit.
So I'm Steve McGrew. 4 of us brothers farm together and a nephew. And we do no-till, and we have quite a bit of cover crops. And I like what it does for erosion control. It really makes a big difference. The ditches and gullies and the beans seem to love it. I worry about the corn sometimes in front of rye, but I really enjoy seeing the cover crop protect the land.
And so going forward, looking at these trial works, what are your interests? What do you look at doing in the future?
Well, there can be a lot of things. Maybe timing of termination of the cover crops. Maybe a lot of things. Population, planting depth, planting date. There's all kinds of things that are fun to learn.
We're standing in a soybean field here today of one of our trials. It's a date of planting study. We'll be with the grower here shortly, and he's going to walk us through kind of how we got this trial implemented. One of the things we wanted to take the time to talk about here today with our trials and kind of this early season window of what we're trying to accomplish. The end goal of our trial is obviously to collect data and to learn something, and that learning can be positive or negative. Regardless, we still learn something. But along with that, yield results that we capture, where they're going to be positive, have a positive yield increase or a negative yield decrease, and then we want to learn why that happened, and some of that doesn't show up on a piece of paper from our as applied files and our harvest files, and we don't capture that. So what do we need to look at? What do we need to do during the season to learn what is going on in these fields? And so as we stand here today and looking at this data planning study, some of the things that we're going to be out here doing and trying to capture early on will be some stand counts, counting some populations of these different trials, these different planting dates. Pull some soil samples probably, looking at what variability there might be from one strip to the next with our soils, and maybe that's influencing what our results are showing. We can take some drone footage. We'll be out here with some drone maybe early on, getting some aerial imagery, aerial views of what's going on. Typically you can see visually a lot better the higher up you go throughout the field as to what's going on. We've got a penetrometer So we're kind of looking at that compaction profile of these soils and then seeing if that's influencing what our results are happening. So those a few of the things that we're looking at early season out in these plots. We're standing here in a field northwest of the capital city of Iowa here in the field of Rod Pierce. So Rod, I'll let you introduce yourself as who you are and kind of what these trials do for you and what you take out of them.
I'm Rod Pierce. I really enjoy working with the Soybean Association on these trials because I feel like I gain more than they do. They put together all kinds of different trials. I've been involved for, looks like, 10, 12 years of trials, probably more before that too even. That's the ones I've kind of found while looking, and the thing I like about them the most is probably they give you a bottom line. So in other words, yeah, it may be a good practice, but how's it going to affect my bottom line? And that I feel is probably one of the most things I look at is whether it's going to make me money or not.
Very good, very good. And so today, Rod, you have a trial with us this year that is looking at soybean date of planting. And so this study is looking at placing 2 varieties planted early and then a later planting date of that about a month later. And so kind of help walk us through what that process is, because we like to keep these simple in terms of application. And so just kind of give an overview of kind of what that looked like getting this trial in the ground.
Well, I was glad that I was asked to do this because it is something that everyone is really wanting to know. Do we need to plant soybeans earlier or not? And what better way to know is to do 2 planting dates in the same field and come up with data and see which is. So I was very interested to be a participant in this trial. So we basically took an 80 acres, and we were fortunate too as we have a corn planter and a soybean planter, so it did not really affect our planting. And in a way, I wanted to try some early planting, and here was a good excuse to do it. It really wasn't that difficult. We just put the one in, and with the GPS, we could just strip across the field the different strips of the same variety, dump the planter, went across the field with the second one. So, it wasn't really all that difficult. Anyway, it was interesting to see them coming up. The difference, one did take off, and we had some nice beans out here. The other one was just coming up. Got a lot of neighbors looked it over, but wondering what I was doing, but that's not uncommon for me. So.
We're here in southwest Iowa outside of Griswold, and we're on site of a cover crop trial that we're working with here. So that late season testing includes some tissue testing probably in late vegetative growth stage like this before we hit the reproductive stages, coming out here and collecting those, some aerial imagery that's getting flown or selected as we go. That kind of plays off collecting that data set as well, and we're able to get the data, get a location, get a boundary for the field, and then incorporate all that information into a file that we can send to an imagery company and collect some imagery. So where though collecting that data becomes imperative. And so in this case, we're looking at our cover crop trial here. We're collecting the as applied file. This is going to be out of the drill that was used to apply the cover crop. And so before that equipment shuffles around and gets placed in combine equipment, we look to get our hands on it and get that as applied file, or that planting file in this case, out of the monitor, so that then when we do get a combine file, we can match those 2 files together. So That's what we're looking for here late in the growing season. We're short and we're sweet, but you can see we're on the verge of harvest. Brent Burbaum has joined me here, the farm that we're on of his. And so Brent, I'll let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the cover crop here that we're standing in front of.
Thank you, Drew. I'm Brent Burbaum from Griswold, farm with my 2 sons and trying to carry on the family farm operation. I thank the Soybean Association for working with us here on this long-term trial, strip trial. We're on the 5th year of our strip trial. I've gained a lot of information on this. I hope to continue it. The only reason I'm not continuing the strip trial is because I'd like to do the whole field. That's my goal now, is to start doing whole fields. I've been mostly doing critical area seeding, and my suggestion would be to start there with producers, start on the problem spots, and then I'm going to try to work into doing whole fields here pretty soon, and eventually try to get most all of my acres under cover crop. The information that we've got yield-wise, I can't say we have a higher yield because of it, but what I'm pleased is the yield has not dropped off, especially on the corn. We've been holding our yield real well, and I'm hoping to gain soil health and continue that without sacrificing yield. So it's worked out real good for us here in the past.
Today, with a little bit of wind and a little bit of rain, we're in the shop and set out in the field, but regardless, there's nothing to see out in the field anyways because the crop's gone. What we're doing here in our wrapping up of our trials is collecting harvest data. And so that's coming right off of the combine monitor. It's laying that over with our as-applied file that we collected earlier. And that's what we're running with. We're not looking for any kind of weigh wagon weights of any kind. Like I say, just those 2 files, and that's what we collect our data from. This data stays in-house. We don't farm this data out to anybody without the permission of the growers. So after we get this all compiled, send it through our analytics team, they generate a report that comes back to us that then we pass on to the grower, and that kind of overlooks what the trial did. Did it work? Did it not work? What the product was. Like I say, some aerial imagery that we collected earlier and talked about in earlier videos. That encompasses some pictures or some scouting data that might have collected throughout the growing season. And then it encompasses what that monitor or GPS data is collecting. And so differentiating some of these yield results by soil types, by topography, slopes, that kind of stuff. And then we incorporate some weather factors in there as well into this data. And this all comes back in this report. So here we are back in the office. This is the point to where we've collected all of our data. And when we've talked about all season of collecting an as-applied file and a harvest file, and those digital files get back to here, and this is the process that takes over here. And so we can bring those up on the screen and give you a little visual of what we're looking at and what we're talking about with these files. And so here's both those files that we're looking at, the harvest data on the left and the as-applied on the right. And that's simply taken directly off the monitor. And with those 2 layers overlap, we're able to extract all the data that we need out of these and then put them into the report that we talked about. All right, so I have joined here with Clint. And Clint, tell me a little bit about what your involvement is with the Soybean Association and strip trials, and yeah, I'll let you take it from there.
We started doing trials, 4 years ago, I think.
Yep.
So we've investigated stuff that we think will help our farm, and join the Soybean Association to do it because they can break down the yields a lot farther than what we can see at home on our computer. So like when we did the Molly trial, there was like a 1/2 bushel gain on the soybeans. Well, we couldn't see a 1/2 bushel when we dug into it, but they could see that. And so then this year we've done some Pivot Bio stuff. that they'll be looking at. And then we've got a population trial on corn as well. And then we did some Clariva stuff. So that's what we've done.
Yeah, and we'll see what that data comes back looking like. And then going forward, what are you looking at doing, or what would you like to see us get involved with going forward?
Like next year, we should have the ability to do some more population stuff on the soybeans. So we'd like to probably look at that. We're hoping maybe we can do a split planter with like Clariva or Saltro on soybean treatments for the nematodes, because we kind of feel that there's a nematode issue for us. So we kind of want to dive into that a little farther.
Sure, sure. Well, thanks for the insight here, Clint, and thanks for participating in our trials here this 2021 growing season.
Yeah, not a problem, and it doesn't take us much time at all to do them, so it works out perfect.
So that's the accumulation of our replicated strip trials. Like I say, pretty easy to do and get involved with. Any interest going forward in working with these strip trials? Any ideas what we should or shouldn't be doing? Reach out to myself or anybody on the research team, and we'd be happy to work with you in the 2022 growing season.